You will not agree with me, but I think Poppy should have 10 chapters. Allow me to explain. The reason I think you won't agree with me is because we obviously don't want to see Poppy get milked in terms of like milking out a bunch of chapters that feel unnecessary, right? We all know by now the original ending was supposed to end in chapter 5. Spoiler alert, there's going to be a chapter 6, so already there's been some deviation, but it could just be they had a lot they wanted to tell and decided to make an extra chapter to make sure they told all of it instead of making either chapter 5 obscenely long or just make sure that it didn't feel like there was a lot of loose ends that could have been cleaned up if they did an extra chapter. We don't know yet. That's fine. The reason I'm saying it should be 10 chapters has nothing to do with that and entirely to do with the chapter length. Now, Markiplier has probably the more infamous crash out when completing chapter 5 himself. But other creators, now that I've gone and watched other people after playing it myself, they also echoed some of the same things he was saying, maybe just calmer. One of the ones is chapter length. Now, when you're a bigger YouTuber, like Corey Kenshin's been gone for months, he played, as a matter of fact, chapter 3 the day before chapter 4 dropped, still pulled in Corey Kenshin numbers. Because when you're an established creator, you can do that. You can get away with that. That's fine. People are going to want to watch you do things at that point, and that's cool. When you're a smaller creator, you can't do that. I couldn't have played chapter 3 the day before chapter 4 dropped last year and expected anything. And even when a new chapter drops, if you're not really dropping on that immediately, it's already like a car coming off of a lot in terms of depreciation. So the reason I'm saying this more has to do with breaking chapters up instead of making 10 chapters. So chapter 1 was a fine length because it was like 40 minutes if you really kind of take your time, right? Chapter 2, in my opinion, perfect length. You can break that up into 3 episodes, or if you want to make a 1 video situation, you know, do you. Chapter 3 probably was fine lengthwise. I just had a horrendous bug where the key didn't drop down from the vent because of the graphical settings. That was the thing they patched and everything. So it made me go around in circles for a lot longer than I should have at that point. And so it just kind of drained me from that point, right? That was probably like a decent length too. Chapter 4 felt kind of like it dragged on, and then chapter 5 in my opinion had a bunch of padding that it kind of just didn't need. I think it's fine if it was maybe the same length but just in halves, right? So you drop the first half of a chapter in January, February, and then you drop the second half of that same chapter in July, August, whatever the 6 month is. So this one was in February, so the next one would be in August, and then you can keep everything in there, and then maybe the puzzles don't feel so like run on because you only had like maybe 5 or 3 or 5 puzzles, you know, in the beginning of the half of the year, and another 4 later on. Well, that's 9 puzzles, sure, but because it's spread out, maybe it just feels better. And so 10 chapters might not be the naming convention that they go with, but maybe, you know, it's part 5, chapter 5, part 1, chapter 5, part 2, the way that movies do it. When, like, you know, Harry Potter came out with the 8th movie, they went 8th movie part 1, 8th movie part 2. So if they don't want to do that, then they go chapter 5, and then later in the summer, chapter 6. So that's what I'm saying about 10 chapters is just lengthwise, because coming from a smaller YouTuber's perspective, in short, it would make it easier to get videos turned around a bit faster, to pump them out and edit them to our own quality and like our own standards of editing. Obviously, I could just put up the raw footage immediately. When you're smaller, people expect more. That's why a lot of the bigger ones can also just do a live stream, and I get it. Live streams are probably the best way to do that quickly too. As someone that likes to edit, as someone that likes to make thumbnails still, as someone that likes to make videos still, I say that's my argument for why instead Poppy should probably be 10 chapters. And I think that way you also maybe look at some of the things that were complained in other ways. Some of the complaints that say Mark had, or even other people had calmer. If it's split in half, maybe because you're not dealing with like 5 hours straight of something, it might feel a bit better, or at least feel like there's a break that you took from. And you can make the argument, well, why don't you just take a break? Again, timing thing. You got to get stuff out as quick as possible. You know, when it comes to SEO, discoverability, just timing and stuff. When something's out, there's a huge demand for it. You got to be the supply. You can't supply like a week or 2 later. I mean, you can, and depending on where you are, what level you are, you can get away with that. But that's basically where I'm coming from making this video. Is the main point is, I think they could benefit from that, because I do think chapters 2 and 3, 2 especially, was peak in terms of length, because you kind of got in, had a bit of an experience, got out, and then if you're editing, or if you're an editor that works for a YouTuber, like you still have not a ton of footage you have to now turn around, like there's a 5, maybe 6 hour situation, depending if they're a struggle or not. You know, that's a fourth of a day just in footage that you still have to go and edit. which even if you're a great editor, you're gonna take your time with it. You love your craft. You're not gonna just kind of put it out, be whatever. That's where I'm coming from. Coming from like a YouTuber perspective, coming from a smaller channel perspective as well. I think it would benefit from that from a couple of reasons. Some of the mechanics that were actually well polished, I do want to say, despite how catharsis Mark's crash out felt to me upon completing chapter 5, now that it's been a second, I do appreciate that chapter 5, for example, was overall more polished. It was way more polished, fewer to no bugs depending on who you ask, which is great. That's what we really kind of wanted after chapter 3, in my opinion, that we didn't get in chapter 4. So I'm nice that they cooked smarter and not harder. But also one of the final things I'll bring up is Isaac, the ex-developer on Poppy Playtime that left, right? They mentioned in a tweet, when someone asked them about the size of the factory and the plan, how deep underground it was going, they answered that not only was the factory not supposed to be huge, it's unbelievably big, but now there's not much that can be done about that. Each chapter was going to be a lot smaller originally, like 1.5 to 2 hours each, so each location wouldn't have needed to be as large. So the developer, Isaac themselves, or the director I should say, for chapters 1 through 3, will also confirm that originally it was also supposed to be smaller chapters. So I just think that would have been cooler. Just kind of nice get in, get out situation, get to edit, get to have fun with it. And even if it is a little bit frustrating because it's a smaller section, then maybe there's like a break until part 2, like I said, in the summer. Or you just call it the next chapter, and then it ends up being 10 chapters. Maybe not chapter 1, obviously. That chapter is already pretty short. You don't need to split that one in half. Chapter 2 is fine. A lot of people say chapter 3 was like the peak as it was. Chapter 4 onwards, now that we're getting a chapter 6, for example, make the full chapter if you want, and release part 1 in like February of next year, and then maybe save the finale till next. Well, I'm not trying to farm the 8-minute ad revenue for this one. I just wanted to have a decent conversation, so I'm gonna end the video here. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification, the actual subscribe button, but I don't know which video will be next. We are just gonna have to wait and see. So until this time, take care and enjoy pizza responsibly. Thank you for watching. And also, what's been your favorite chapter or your favorite part of chapter 5? Comment.